Hi guys, welcome back. Please make sure you have the 8-8 notes printed or at least copied down beforehand. Again, we're on 8-8, factoring by grouping, and these are the notes. There's 8 questions, so let's get started. I'm going to stick with one technique on these. I typically teach 2, but I'm going to stick with 1 to try to really hone that skill. I think it's a really effective one. You're welcome to obviously Google more videos on how to factor a 4-term polynomial. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 pieces. A 4-term polynomial. You could also Google factor by grouping. And there's lots of videos out there, various techniques. I'm going to stick with the Punnett square. So the first thing I want us to do is draw the Punnett square. And like it says, it's a square. So let's get that drawn. Awesome. Next, go ahead and make your boxes. Now we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. And we're going to fill in these 4 boxes. 4 terms, 4 boxes. Aha, makes sense. First term goes in the first box. Make sure your writing's nice and clear. Second term, including the sign, goes in the second box. Awesome. Third term, including the sign, goes in the third box. And the last term, this beautiful little constant, no variable, goes in the last one. Notice, it's exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the signs are included. So what are we going to do from this point? Well, we're going to factor out the greatest common factor. You guys have heard GCF a million times through your middle school existence. I've mentioned it as well. 8-2 of this chapter, we learned how to factor out a GCF. Remember, it's the greatest common factor that a group has, which could include numbers, letters. So let's see what we do. And we're going to do this in columns. So let's do this column first. So I'm only talking about these 2 right here. What do these 2 guys have in common? Greatest common factor. And we're going to write that here. So let's see. Let's look at the numbers first. I can clearly see that they both have a 4 in common. So the number 4 is part of the greatest common factor. But I can see that these 2 had something else in common. I see they have a letter in common. What's the most letter they have in common? That would be m squared. Awesome. We're 1 part out of 4 parts, almost done. Let's look at this beautiful row here and see what they have in common. Looks like they both have a positive 5 in common. And no letter. He has an M, but he doesn't. So M is not something they have in common. Okay, now let's go up. Looking at this beautiful column, let's see what they have in common. Well, 4 and 5, nothing there. You could take out a 1, but that's not going to really do anything. But I see that they have a variable in common. And the variable they have in common is a single variable of M. Here, that's interesting. Let's see what they have in common. What is their greatest common factor? Well, they both have a plus, so that's a nice giveaway. 4 and 5. There is no number that equally divides into both 4 and 5 other than 1. So we can go with 1. And they do not have a letter in common. So let's just double check to make sure we've done everything correct. These 2, the greatest common factor is 4m squared. These 2, the greatest common factor is a positive 5. These 2, the greatest common factor is a single variable of m. And these 2, the greatest common factor is a single variable of 1. You're like, well, what is the answer? The answer is this, m plus 1, times this, m squared plus 5. And that's our final answer. It's a binomial times a binomial that would make this 4-term polynomial. Now, you're probably thinking, Miss Miller, can I write the answer this way if I wanted to? Definitely. The commutative property allows us to move multiplication around and still get the same answer. Let's do a quick check and make sure we have the answer correct. And I can clearly see that that is exactly the original. I know I have factored it correctly. Beautiful. Let's go on to question number 2. We're going to go a little quicker this time. So let's go ahead and draw our Punnett square. Let's place our 4 terms in the square. So that first term goes first. That second term, including the sign, goes in the second box. That third term goes in this third box. And yes, it has to be this order. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And here we go. So we're going to find the greatest common factor of each row and each column. So let's see how we do. 15 and 20. 15 and 20, their greatest common factor would be 5. Do they have any variables in common? They do, x squared. How about here? Looks like they have a 4 in common, but no variables. How about here? 15 and 12. What's the largest number that can be divided out of both 15 and 12? That number would be 3. And they do have a x that they have in common. And now we have here. Definitely it's a positive because everybody's positive. And it's going to be a 4, not 2. I understand that 2 is a common factor, but it's not the greatest common factor. So our answer is going to be 3x plus 4 and 5x squared plus 4. And if you multiply this back out, you get back to the original answer. So I'm going to stop here. I'd like you guys to try the next maybe 2, 3, 4 questions and see how you do. And we'll start with the next video. Thanks.